Welcome to the Thriving Scapegoat, a podcast for women who are cast as the problem, when in truth, they were the truth tellers. I'm your host, Julie Cielo, somatic coach, author, and guide for women healing from complex trauma, family enmeshment, and the invisible wounds of being scapegoated. If you ever felt misunderstood, exiled, or blamed for dynamics you didn't create, if you've done the deep work to break the generational patterns and you're ready to reclaim your voice, your body, and your life, you're in the right place. This is where we stop over-explaining, stop performing for love, and start living in alignment with what's real. Here, we talk about nervous system healing, shadow work, emotional sovereignty, and what it takes to not just survive your past, but thrive beyond it. Because you were never too much. You were never the problem. You were the disruption to the dysfunction, and now you get to become the woman who rises because of it. Let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to the Thriving Scapegoat. Today's episode is provocative, and honestly, it needs to be. Because when I think we need to have a much bigger conversation about who has been historically defining trauma healing and in psychology, human development, even spirituality, men, and more importantly, who's been left out of these conversations entirely, women, women's bodies, women's nervous systems, women's lived experiences in relational trauma, hormone realities, emotional labor, chronic hypervigilance that comes from all of it, and the survival adaptations because of it. I want to say clearly before we begin here, this isn't anti-men, okay? This is pro-truth, pro-women, and pro-embodiment. Because women have spent centuries becoming experts in nervous systems just to survive the environments that men have created. We're seeing that more now than ever. And that sentence right there might make some people uncomfortable. I don't fucking care. Discomfort is not always danger. Because something feels discomfort doesn't mean reality is brushing up against denial. When I look back at my own life, I realize that I was studying nervous systems long before I knew what the term even meant. Because reading rooms, planning 10 steps ahead, reading moods and silence, and predicting emotional shifts and sensing danger before words are even spoken. And almost every woman I know understands how to do this intuitively, listening to their body, because women are conditioned very early on to monitor emotional environments for safety, their own safety. And that's not weakness, that's strength and adaptation. Yet somehow the dominant frameworks were inherited around trauma and psychology were overwhelmingly created by through the male lens. Freud, Jung, Campbell, brilliant men in many ways, and still their theories largely centered around male consciousness, male individuation, male theology, male development, male journeys. Even Joseph Campbell's hero's journey shaped modern storytelling, psychology, and spirituality and self-development, but it was built around masculine archetypal development, conquest and separation, achievement and return. But women's journeys often look profoundly different. Mary Magdalene, silenced. Women rarely socialize towards individuation first. Women are socialized towards attachment and caregiving, emotional labor and self-sacrifice, beauty, smiling, towards managing everyone else's comfort before their own. So tiring and fated. This creates completely different nervous system conditioning. So it's hard for me to listen to a lot of male coaches under patriarchy talk about this, because women, I know, didn't become anxious randomly. They didn't become anxious because their nervous system adapted to environments requiring constant emotional vigilance. That's how they adapted. And yet, most of psychology historically, pathologized women instead of contextualizing them. Women were hysterical or emotional, borderline, too sensitive. Look around. Meanwhile, many were surviving chronic relational trauma. And this is what's important, is that trauma is not what happened to us physically. Trauma is what's happened to the nervous system repeatedly. Experiences of powerlessness and unpredictability, invalidation and emotional inconsistency, shame, fear, abandonment, chronic relational unsafety. And that changes the body, literally. And women are the ones carrying the enormous physiological and psychological consequence from this. That's why autoimmune disease and chronic anxiety, burnout, insomnia, gut problems, hormonal dysregulation, eating disorders, addiction, people-pleasing, functional freeze. Do you know that roughly 80% of all autoimmune conditions occur in women? That matters. And yet, CPTSD, which disproportionately affects women with histories of chronic relational trauma more, still is not recognized in the DSM. Think about that. Where's the research going? Millions of women living with hypervigilance and emotional dysregulation, disassociation, shame, attachment wounds, freeze states, and somatic symptoms. Yet the dominant psychiatric framework still largely organizes around system management instead of deeper relational and nervous system understanding. Otherwise, we'd be in circles like the indigenous. And honestly, this is one of the reasons why I chose not to become a licensed psychotherapist. Now, listen carefully before people misunderstand me. I believe therapy can be tremendously helpful. I have used therapy many years, but I believe therapists are deeply compassionate and necessary. So this isn't an attack on any individual practitioners, but I also believe that the larger system itself is medicalized, corporatized, and still heavily shaped by patriarchal models of healing, checking boxes. A model where suffering becomes categorized, medicated, managed, and billable. While many women are fundamentally starving for community and embodiment, nature, self-belonging, rest and truth, co-regulation with other women, and nervous system repair. So honestly, I think women know this intuitively. I sure do. And that's why so many women eventually leave purely cognitive healing spaces, searching for something deeper, because trauma isn't just intellectual, it's embodied. And this is also why I think so many women feel spiritually homeless right now, because modern culture rewards disassociation and hypervigilance, especially in women. We are rewarded for over-functioning, over-giving, over-producing, and over-performing while silencing ourselves. Meanwhile, internally, women feel completely disconnected from themselves and each other. And that's the way the system likes it. Patriarchy depends heavily on female disembodiment and female separation from one another. A disconnected woman is easier to manipulate, and a disconnected woman questions herself constantly. And that's what the media loves, a disconnected woman who abandons her intuition in favor of external authority. But an embodied woman? An embodied woman becomes harder to control. And because embodiment restores discernment, and discernment threatens the system that's built on obedience. Again, this is not about anti-men. Some of the safest people in my life today are men. So supportive, beautiful, beautiful men exist. Conscious men exist, and emotionally available men do exist. But we can't ignore the statistical reality that most violence against the world and against women and children, sexual violence, domestic violence, financial control, and psychological abuse has historically been perpetuated by men. And women's nervous systems adapted accordingly. And that adaptation became hypervigilance, fawning, people-pleasing, body shame, and self-surveillance, a fear of visibility and aging, of being too much. Women have become experts at reading nervous systems because our survival has required it. And this is why women often understand relational trauma so deeply, because women are usually carrying not only their own emotions, but everyone else's. I know I sure did for many, many years until I said enough. And that emotional labor becomes invisible because it gets normalized culturally. And I know I've been judged for stepping out of it. And I think many midlife awakenings are actually moments where women are just finally realizing how profoundly disconnected they've been and how all of it has been through survival. So the divorce and the burnout, leaving corporate and the estrangement or the autoimmune condition or the full-on collapse or the deep loneliness and addiction, not because women are failing, but because the body eventually stops tolerating this type of self-abandonment and is trying to break out of it. And that realization changed everything for me personally, because after decades of yoga and meditation and entrepreneurship and doing everything right as the parentified child and the married woman, healing work and discipline and self-awareness, yet I realized I still was trying to heal through cognition and through performance in the world. Meanwhile, my nervous system was needing something much different, slower, safer, nature, rhythm, community, and embodiment. And that realization is what birthed Seasonal Somatics, a project that I was working on before Femme Fatale. Seasonal Somatics isn't just another wellness brand to me. It's a response and a need, a response to a culture and a time where women are profoundly overstimulated yet emotionally disconnected. A response to healing spaces that were toxic and prioritizing productivity in the way we look over true embodiment. So this conversation is still largely masculine in a lot of ways, and the conquest and the transcendence that's rather cyclical to the female experience. Women are cyclical, hormonal, seasonal, relational, and intuitive. And I think authentic healing for women must include the body, community, nature, and grief, stillness, truth, rest, and boundaries. Our sensuality, our creativity, all need nervous system repair. Not just from system management, not endless optimization and a better morning routine, not becoming a better woman or becoming an honest one or whatever you're looking to become. So I want you to just pause and notice in your body. Notice how rarely women are invited to simply just feel without judgment, without needing to improve or take care of somebody else. And in that is revolutionary. And maybe that's what thriving after trauma really is no fucks giving. No perfection, no endless healing work, not transcendence, but embodiment. Being imperfectly imperfect, fully alive and here, connected to ourselves again and living life. This is the work that I do now through Seasonal Somatics and this podcast, through creating women's circles that involve breath work and nervous system healing. And we're building this community together. This would be nothing without you, because women do not need more shame. They don't need spaces that they don't feel enough in, that they are feeling like they have to keep self-abandoning. So in the next episode, I'm going to talk about something that is quietly becoming an epidemic, functional freeze disguised as wellness, and the women who look calm, productive, and healed while internally feeling completely disconnected from life itself. This is the thriving scapegoat. And this is where, as women, we stop surviving the world and start returning to ourselves. Thank you for being here. If today's episode resonated, that's your entry point. Healing scapegoating isn't just insight, it's nervous system work. And this is what I teach through seasonal somatics, a body-based method that helps you regulate, reconnect, and move with real change. I offer weekly group classes, both in person and online, immersive retreats, and limited one-on-one mentorship. You can find all the details in the show notes. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs it, and make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, choose truth over belonging, self-trust over self-abandonment. You didn't just survive this to stay stuck. You're here to thrive.